Okay, so let's jump behind the code which helps the drop-down list to display the slogan of the state that is selected. So as before, we have an event handler here, and essentially the event handler fires when the user interacts with the control. Always remember that events are situations where the user does something to the form or to a particular control on the form, right? An event is user driven, and essentially an event is how the program, right, or the website reacts to user input. It's the way for the program to be interactive with the user and to respond to what the user is doing and requesting of the program. So if you notice, this particular event handler handles the selected index changed event from the drop-down list. So in other words, when the selected index is changed, then and essentially we change the selected index by choosing a different option on the drop-down list. And so when we choose a different option on the drop-down list, the index changes from the drop-down list. All right, so let's go to here and see what's going on. As before, we have to assign the value, the selected value, from the drop-down list into a variable. And in this particular case, we are using a variable called state, right? Now, the case statement is very, very similar to the if statement. They achieve pretty much the same thing. They have pretty much the same function in that they choose from a set of actions which are done depending on the value of a variable, right? So we're looking at the value of a variable, and depending on what we find inside that variable, we will do a different action. It's kind of like you look in your vacation fund, and if you see thousands of dollars, well, maybe you'll go to Europe. If you see a couple $100, then you might go to Jamaica. Or if you just have, you know, a few dollars, then maybe you'll just go down to River Street, right, and have some dinner. All right. So what we're saying is select case of state. And what we're essentially doing here is looking inside the variable called state. And we're saying, depending on what we find, we will do a different action. In the case where it is Georgia, right? So in the case where the state is equal to Georgia, we will do this particular line of code. So if you think of it in terms of an if statement, it's kind of like this. If state equals Georgia, then do all of this, yeah? And so you can see it's very, very equivalent to an if statement, all right? Else, if state equals Florida, then do all of this, yeah? It really is just like an if statement, right? Else, if state equals South Carolina, then do all of this. And so you can see the if statement and the case statement achieves a very similar result, right? All right, let's look at how this actually works inside of our web form. Let's jump back to our web form and see what it would actually look like in real life. All right, so we're gonna close this. We're gonna run our web form again. All right, great. And so here's our web form once again. And here, if we click on the state, we're going to click on Georgia. Notice it writes Peach State at the top of the web page. If we click on South Carolina, notice it writes Palmetto State at the top of the web page. All right, so two big things to notice here. We are actually creating content on the fly. On the fly simply means dynamically or as needed. There's two terminologies that you should be aware of. One is design time and one is runtime. So in other words, we are creating web content at runtime. Yeah. When we click on Florida, it says Sunshine State. When we click on Georgia, it says Peach State. This is at runtime because we've actually run the website, and depending on what the user does while interacting with the control, right, the web page responds accordingly. And so it's dynamically generating content, right? And so, of course, when you log on to Amazon, it recognizes who you are. It says, welcome, David. It shows you the stuff that you've been browsing. It shows you new recommendations. It shows you things that are similar to what you've been looking at, right? And this is how Amazon works, essentially by using web programming to generate content on the fly or at runtime. If we look back at our program itself, so for example, if we had hard-coded the web content, then we would have what's called a static page, right? But now everybody wants pages that are personalized to their purpose. They want pages that are, their particular web page, right? It's my version. It's my website. It's created for a user of one. Yeah. And so using this dynamic type of web programming is how we can generate content specific to the user. Notice that in this particular case, we're using the response.write, and inside the response.write, we're literally writing out HTML the same way we would have done it if we had hard-coded it into our web page, right? And so literally we're simply writing out, we have an H1 tag, we have a style attribute, color blue, and then in between the H1 tag and the ending tag, the /H1, we have Peach State, which is actually what's get written to the web page. All right, so that's essentially how your drop-down list should work for that one, right? Essentially, when you click on each state, it should write out the slogan of the state. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Remember that if statements and case statements are a part of November 16 homework, classwork. And remember, I'm also going to be using that same classwork as your assignment 3. So that's a 2-for-1 deal, right? And remember that by doing the November 16 classwork, you will have prepared for the exam, all right? You will have prepared for the exam. All right, thanks, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.